Father Donald, please. I beg you, don't do this to me. Father, please, she screamed. My name is Judith, and if there's one thing you should know about me, it's that I was raised in the church, not just any church, but a strict, deeply Catholic home. Missing Mass was practically a sin, and church activities were more important than anything else. Faith wasn't just something we practiced, it was a way of life. My parents weren't just Sunday Catholics. No, they were everyday Catholics, morning Mass, evening rosary, Bible studies, choir rehearsals. If there was a church event, we were there. No excuses. I grew up knowing all the prayers by heart, the Hail Mary, the Our Father, the Apostles' Creed. I could recite them in my sleep. I knew when to kneel, when to stand, when to respond during Massachusetts. It was second nature to me, and honestly, I didn't mind. I loved the church. It felt like home. I became an altar server when I was 10, and by the time I turned 15, I wasn't just any altar server, I was the vice president. That meant I wasn't just serving at Mass, I was leading the younger ones, making sure they were prepared, helping them understand the importance of what we were doing. I took it seriously because, to me, being an altar server wasn't just about carrying the cross or ringing the bells during consecration. It was about being close to God. And I wasn't alone in that. There was Frank. Frank was my closest friend in church. We had been serving together for as long as I could remember, and everyone knew us as a pair. If you saw me, you saw Frank. If I wasn't at Mass, people would ask him where I was. If he missed a meeting, they'd ask me. That's just how it was. He was the one person I could always count on. Frank had this way of making everything feel okay. He was the kind of friend who would remind me to pray when I was struggling, who would make me laugh when I was tired, who would always tell me, Judith, keep your eyes on God. He never fails. I believed that. I needed to believe that. Because in church, I felt safe. It was the one place where nothing bad could happen. Or at least, that's what I thought. Then there was Father Donald. He wasn't officially a priest yet, just a seminarian, a few months away from being ordained. But everyone already treated him like one. People loved him. He was the kind of man who made you feel like he was closer to God than the rest of us. He was always praying, always reading his Bible, always speaking so gently, so calmly. If you had a problem, he was the person you went to. Father, I need prayers for my family. Father, I'm struggling in school. Father, I want to be a better Christian. And he would always smile and say, let's pray together. It was hard not to admire him. Even I did. I mean, why wouldn't I? A man who loved God that much, who was so kind, so patient, so holy. Of course, I respected him. Of course, I trusted him. We all did. And that's what made everything so much worse. I still remember the day he asked me, Judith, can you help me clean my room? It sounded so normal. Of course, I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? He was a priest, or at least, about to be one. And me? I was an altar server. Helping out was what I did. So I smiled and said, yes, Father. That was my first mistake. I walked into his room, and everything seemed fine at first. The place was neat. Too neat, actually, it didn't even look like it needed cleaning. But I didn't question it. I just grabbed a cloth and started wiping down the table. And that's when I felt it. A hand on my waist. I froze. For a second I thought, no. I must be imagining it. Maybe he was just reaching for something. Maybe it was an accident. But then his fingers pressed into my side, slow, deliberate. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Father, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his hand lingered for just a second longer before pulling away, like nothing had happened. I turned to look at him, my heart pounding. He was smiling. "You're such a good girl, Judith. Always so helpful." I wanted to believe I had imagined it. I wanted to believe that it was nothing. So I forced a small, nervous laugh and stepped away. "Thank you, Father." Then I left. I didn't run. I didn't say anything. I just left. But my body was shaking. And I didn't know why. I avoided him after that. It wasn't obvious. I still saw him in church, still greeted him, still acted normal. But I made sure never to be alone with him. Not if I could help it. But then, a few weeks later, it happened again. I don't even remember how I ended up alone with him that time. Maybe I had let my guard down. Maybe I had convinced myself that I was overreacting. But there I was. And there he was. "Judith," he said softly, standing too close to me. I tried to step back, but he caught my wrist, gently, almost like he was being careful. "Do you know how beautiful you are?" I felt something cold crawl up my spine. "Father, I should go," I mumbled, trying to pull away. But he didn't let go. Instead, he raised his other hand and touched my face. I froze. "You don't have to be afraid," he whispered. I wasn't just afraid. I was terrified. And then, he leaned in. I felt his breath on my skin, the weight of what was happening crashing down on me all at once. "No." I yanked my hand away and stumbled back. His eyes darkened for just a second. Then the smee. "You're still young," he murmured. "But don't worry. Just 3 years from now, you'll be old enough." Without fear. I stared at him. I heard what he said. I understood the words. But I didn't want to believe them. So I shook my head. Turned. And left. Again. But this time, my legs felt like lead. This time, my hands were shaking even harder. This time, I knew. And I never should have gone back. I should have known better. I should have trusted my instincts. Something had been telling me to stay away from Father Donald, to keep my distance, to never be alone with him again. But I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that a man of God, someone respected, someone loved, someone who was supposed to guide us, could be capable of something evil. So I convinced myself that maybe I had been wrong. Maybe that touch, that attempted kiss, it wasn't what I thought. Maybe he had just made a mistake. Maybe he wasn't truly dangerous. But deep down, I knew. That's why I took my friend with me that day. I didn't want to go alone. I didn't tell her why, of course, how could I? I just casually asked if she wanted to come with me to church, and she said yes. Just like that. No questions, no hesitation. I felt safer. He wouldn't try anything if someone else was there. Right? At first, everything felt normal. The usual sounds of people moving around. The quiet hum of prayers in the background. I even started to relax a little. Then he saw me. "Judith," Father Donald said, smiling in that same way that made my skin crawl. "You finally came." I forced a smile. "Yes, Father." His eyes flicked to my friend. "And who is this?" She introduced herself cheerfully, completely unaware of the tension tightening in my chest. "Ah, welcome," he said warmly. Then he looked back at me. "You both must be thirsty. Let me get you something to drink." I didn't like the way he said it. Something about it made my stomach twist. "Oh, we're fine, Father," I said quickly. But my friend, unaware of my unease, laughed. "Actually, I'd love a drink." I hesitated. Before I could say anything, he disappeared into the next room. A moment later, he returned with 2 bottles of soda. One was cold. The other wasn't. He handed me the cold one. I didn't even think. I didn't even realize. "Do you mind if we switch?" I really prefer the cold one, my friend asked casually. Of course, I said, handing it to her. Just like that. I had no idea. I had just saved myself. At first, nothing seemed strange. We sat, sipped our drinks, chatted about random things. Then, I feel weird, my friend murmured, blinking slowly. I turned to her, concerned. What do you mean? She swayed a little. I don't know, just tired. And then, right in front of me, she closed her eyes and slumped over. My heart stopped. Hey! Wake up! I said, shaking her gently. Nothing. Panic rushed through me. Father, something is wrong. I turned to him. He was watching us. Carefully. Too carefully. Then, as if nothing was strange, he said, she must just be tired. Don't worry. I swallowed hard. Are you sure? Of course, he said smoothly. Then he looked at me. Actually, Judith, can you do me a favor? I need something from the market. Could you go get it for me? I frowned. But my friend. She'll be fine, he interrupted. Too quickly. Just let her rest. It's nothing serious. Something was wrong. I felt it. But I had no reason to say no. I didn't want to seem rude. I didn't want to act like I suspected anything. So I nodded. Okay. I took the money. And left. But as I walked toward the market, something in my gut twisted. Why had he asked me to go? Why right now? Why did my friend fall asleep so fast? I stopped walking. Cold fear crawled up my spine. I turned. And ran. I didn't even think about it. I just ran. Back to the church. As fast as my legs could see. I didn't know what I expected to find. But I knew I couldn't leave her alone. I burst into the room. My friend was still there. Still asleep. Father Donald was sitting calmly, flipping through his Bible, like nothing had happened. He looked up at me, raising an eyebrow. Oh. You're back so soon. I didn't answer. I rushed to my friend and shook her harder this time. Wake up. Please, wake up. She stirred, groggy. What happened? She mumbled. You fell asleep, I said, my voice shaking. She rubbed her eyes. I feel dizzy. I turned and looked at Father Donald. He was watching me. Watching us. She must have been really tired, he said, standing up. It happens. I felt sick. Something had happened. Or maybe it was going to happen. But he had sent me away. And now I was back before he expected me to be. I grabbed my friend's hand. We need to go. She was still drowsy, still slow. But she nodded. We left. Quickly. Not looking back. The entire way home, my mind raced. Had I just left my friend in danger? Had something happened while I was gone? I wanted to ask her. But I was too afraid of the answer. Because if she said yes, if she told me something had happened, then I would have to accept the truth. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. I should have known something was wrong the moment he asked me. It was just another regular day. I was trying to focus on my responsibilities, arranging things for the younger altar servers, making sure everything was in order for Sunday Mass. That's when the president of the altar servers, the leader of both the boys and girls, called me aside. Judith, I need you to do something. I looked up at him, already feeling a sense of unease creeping into my chest. What is it? I asked. Father Donald needs his room cleaned. I want you to go immediately. My stomach tightened. His room. Again. I had been avoiding that place ever since the last time. Ever since the weird comments. The inappropriate touches. The way he looked at me. In a way that made my skin crawl. I had been ignoring his calls. Dodging him after Massachusetts, making sure I was never alone near him. And now. Here I was. Being sent back into his space. I wanted to say no. I should have said no. But how could I? The altar server president was older than me. Respected by everyone. And if I refused, I knew it wouldn't end well. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Okay, I said quietly. My hands were already shaking. I walked toward Father Donald's room, my heart pounding harder with every step. I could still remember the last time I was in there. The way his hand had lingered on my waist. The way he had spoken to me. The way I had barely gotten away. Now I was about to step into that space again. Alone. I hesitated at the door. Knocked once. Come in, his voice called from inside. I swallowed hard. Pushed the door open. And stepped inside. The room looked the same as before. Neat. Too neat. Like it didn't even need to be cleaned. Father Donald was sitting at his desk, flipping through a Bible. He looked up and smiled. Ah, Judith. I was hoping you'd come. Something about the way he said it sent a chill through my bones. I nodded stiffly. The altar server president asked me to clean your room. Of course, he said, standing up. You're always so helpful. I forced a tight smile. I just wanted to get this over with. Grabbing a cloth from the small cupboard, I began dusting the table. I could feel his eyes on me. Watching. Waiting. I tried to ignore it. Tried to focus. But my skin prickled with unease. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him move. Slowly. Stepping closer. You work so hard, Judith, he murmured, his voice soft. You deserve to be appreciated. I kept my eyes on the table. Thank you, Father. A pause. Then. I felt it. A hand. On my back. Slow. Deliberate. My entire body stiffened. You're growing into a beautiful young woman, he said, his fingers trailing lightly down my spine. I felt sick. Father, I whispered, stepping away. He chuckled. Why are you acting so shy? I gripped the cloth in my hand, my knuckles white. I need to finish cleaning, I said quickly, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed, almost as if he was disappointed. Of course. Go ahead. I forced myself to keep moving. To keep wiping the desk. To keep pretending like everything was normal. Like I wasn't terrified. Minutes passed. He didn't touch me again. Didn't say anything. I let out a slow, shaky breath. Maybe that was it. Maybe he would just let me clean and leave. Maybe. Judith. I froze. He was closer again. Too close. I turned slowly. And saw something in his eyes. Something dark. Something that made my stomach twist. Come here, he said softly. My throat went dry. Why? His smile didn't reach his eyes. I just want to talk. We can talk from here, Father. His jaw tightened. I said, come here. I felt trapped. The door was behind him. The only way out was through him. My pulse pounded in my ears. I needed to think. I needed to get out. So I did the only thing I could. I smiled. Small. Forced. Of course, Father, I said, taking a slow step forward. He relaxed. Just a little. That was all I needed. And then I ran. I bolted for the door, heart hammering. I heard him curse behind me. Judith. I yanked the door open. Dashed out. Didn't stop. Didn't look back. I ran straight out of the church, down the street, lungs burning. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran. Away from him. Away from the place I once thought was safe. Away from the truth I had been too afraid to accept. I never went back. Not alone. Not ever. And to this day, I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't run? What if I hadn't taken my friend with me that other day? What if she hadn't switched drinks with me? How many others were there? How many had not been as lucky? I don't have the answers. But I know this. I should have never been afraid of questioning a man just because he was a man of God. Because a true man of God would never have made me feel the way he did. Would never have hurt me the way he almost did. And I would never be silent again. After that day, everything changed. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my parents. Not my friends. Not even Frank. I was too scared. Too ashamed. What if they didn't believe me? What if they thought I was lying? What if they said I was the problem? So I stayed silent. But silence is heavy. And secrets like that, they eat you alive. I stopped going to church as much. I made excuses, schoolwork, headaches, fatigue. But my mother noticed. "Judith, what's wrong?" she asked one evening. "Nothing, Mama. I'm just tired." She frowned. "You don't seem like yourself." I forced a smile. "I'm fine." She didn't push. But I could tell she didn't believe me. And I was scared. Because if I told her, if I really told her, would she even believe me? I thought I could handle it on my own. Thought I could pretend like nothing happened. But then, one day after Mass, Frank pulled me aside. "What's going on with you?" he asked. "Nothing," I lied. He gave me a look. "Judith, you've been different. You barely talk to me. You don't stay after Mass anymore. And every time Father Donald is around, you act like you want to disappear." My chest tightened. "It's nothing, Frank." "Really?" He didn't believe me. I could see it in his face. "Did he do something to you?" he asked, voice low. I felt my heart stop. I opened my mouth. Then closed it. He knew. "Some." I whispered, "Yes." Frank's entire expression changed. His hands clenched into fists. "What did he do?" "I don't want to talk about it." "Judith. Please, Frank. Just leave it." But he didn't leave it. That night, I got a message from him. "Frank, I talked to someone." My stomach dropped. "Me, who?" "Frank, one of the other girls. She said he made her feel weird too." My fingers trembled as I typed. "Me, what do you mean?" "Frank, she said he touches her sometimes. Always in ways that seem accidental. But she feels it's not. She thought she was imagining it. But now she's not so sure." I felt like I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just me. It was never just me. And suddenly, I was angry. Not just scared. Not just ashamed. Angry. Because this man, this so-called man of God, was hurting girls like me. And no one was doing anything about it. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I wouldn't. I told my mother that night. Everything. Every touch. Every word. Every moment of fear. At first, she just stared at me, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then, she cried. Not just soft tears, but deep, shaking sobs. And when she spoke, her voice was sharp with rage. Why didn't you tell me? I was scared, Mama. She pulled me into her arms, held me so tight I could barely breathe. No more fear, she whispered. We are going to fight this. And we did. The next day, my mother went straight to the parish office. She demanded a meeting with the priest in charge. She demanded answers. And she wasn't alone. Because Frank, he told more people. And suddenly, other girls started speaking up too. One by one, their voices rose. Until the church had to listen. Until Father Donald couldn't hide anymore. Until the truth, the ugly, horrifying truth, was finally seen. Father Donald was removed from the church. Investigated. Exposed. He never became a priest. And I never saw him again. But even now, sometimes, I still think about that day. The cold drink. The heavy silence. The way my body knew something was wrong before my mind could accept it. And I wonder, what would have happened to me if I hadn't trusted that feeling? What would have happened to the others if I had never spoken up? I don't know. I don't want to know. But I do know this. I found my voice. And I will never, never let someone like him take it from me again. Even though Father Donald was removed from the church, the damage he left behind didn't disappear overnight. For a while, I struggled with everything: my faith, my trust in authority, my ability to feel safe in a place that had once been my home. I couldn't pray without hearing his voice. I couldn't step inside the church without feeling that familiar cold fear creep up my spine. And worst of all, I couldn't shake the guilt. What if I had spoken up sooner? How many other girls had suffered because I stayed silent? I knew it wasn't my fault. I knew the blame was his, not mine. But knowing and believing were two different things. And healing. Healing was something I wasn't sure I knew how to do. Frank stayed by my side through it all. You did the right thing, he told me one evening as we sat outside my house. I shrugged. Then why doesn't it feel like it? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because the right thing is usually the hardest thing. I looked at him. He wasn't wrong. But I was still tired. So tired. People in the church reacted in different ways. Some were supportive. Others? Not so much. Are you sure you're not misunderstanding what happened? Someone asked me one day. Father Donald was such a good man. Maybe he just got too friendly. Why did you wait so long to say something? The questions felt like knives. And I wanted to scream. I waited because I was scared. I waited because I thought no one would believe me. And now that I've spoken up, you're proving me right. But I didn't scream. I just walked away. Because I had already wasted too much energy on my fear. I wasn't about to waste any more on their doubt. I knew I had a choice. I could let this break me. Or I could take back what was stolen from me. My faith. My strength. My voice. I wasn't going to let Father Donald take those things from me forever. So, little by little, I started rebuilding. I started going to therapy. I started talking to other girls who had gone through the same thing. I started finding my way back to the parts of my faith that still felt real. It wasn't easy. Some days it felt impossible. But step by step, prayer by prayer, I started healing. And with every piece of myself that I reclaimed, I knew I had survived. I had won. And I would never be silent again. Because my story, it wasn't just mine. It was for every girl who had been afraid to speak. For every voice that had been silenced. For every person who had ever felt powerless. And if there was one thing I had learned, it was that silence only protects the abuser. Not the victim. Not the truth. Not justice. So I promised myself, if I would believe them, I would listen. Because sometimes all it takes to change a life is for someone to finally say, I believe you. And mean it. Years passed. The wounds didn't fully disappear, but they faded. I learned that healing isn't about forgetting, it's about learning to live beyond the pain. I never saw Father Donald again. I didn't need to. His absence didn't erase what he did, but it gave me space to breathe, to move forward, to rebuild. Frank and I remained close. He never treated me differently, never made me feel broken or weak. If anything, he reminded me of my strength on the days I forgot it. Church wasn't the same, but I found my own way back to faith, not in blind obedience, but in truth, in a God who stood with the broken, not with those who hurt them. And most importantly, I kept my promise. I spoke up. I listened. I stood beside those who needed a voice, just as I had once needed one. Because silence had almost destroyed me. But in the end, my voice saved me. And it would save others too. Is really so sad how Judith had to face all this despite being devoted to God. Tell me your opinion on this. Kindly like and subscribe to get more video like this and turn on your notifications to get any videos we post.